When you think of Easter, you probably picture egg hunts, chocolate bunnies, and pastel-colored joy. But beneath the cheerful surface of this spring holiday, some stories hide a much darker truth. Every year, as families gather to celebrate rebirth and renewal, others find themselves facing something far more sinister: strange disappearances, chilling encounters in the woods, and holiday traditions twisted into nightmares. These are not legends or campfire tales. These are real accounts told by those who lived through the most unsettling Easter experiences imaginable. From isolated cabins to haunted backyards, these stories will make you think twice the next time you see a bunny costume or hear a knock at your door after dark. So turn down the lights and prepare yourself for 5 disturbing true Easter horror stories. Story 1: The Buried Eggs. Easter Sunday, 2016. My family and I had driven up to my grandparents' old farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania. It was tradition: pastel decorations, too much food, and the annual Easter egg hunt in the overgrown backyard. This year felt different, though. My grandfather had passed away a few months earlier, and the house felt colder without him. Still, we pressed on, hoping to lift everyone's spirits. The morning was chilly, mist hung low over the grass, and the sky stayed a murky gray, refusing to brighten. My mom and aunt hid the eggs while the rest of us stayed inside sipping coffee. There were 10 kids hunting that year, ranging from 4 to 11, and they were rowdy, impatient, and excited. When it was time, they stampeded into the backyard, giggling and shouting. The first few eggs were easy to spot, nestled in bushes, tucked beside flower pots. Then came the shouts. "I found one," yelled my cousin Ellie. "No, I did, it's mine," screamed her younger brother. But then a different scream broke the pattern. It wasn't playful, it was sharp, real, and scared. It came from my nephew, Lucas. He was standing near the edge of the woods, holding something in his hand. At first, we thought it was another plastic egg, but his face told a different story. My brother ran over and pulled the object from Lucas's hand, and then went pale. It wasn't an egg, it was a jawbone, human. Panic set in instantly. The hunt was over. We ushered the kids back inside while my uncle called the police. They arrived an hour later and began surveying the woods behind the property. They marked off the area where Lucas had found the bone, and within the hour they uncovered more. A shallow grave, bones, clothing remnants, jewelry, teeth. The investigation took days. They set up tents, combed the woods, and asked us not to leave town until they had more answers. The rest of Easter weekend was a fog of police tape and confusion. Eventually, the bones were identified. The remains belonged to a girl named Amanda Howell. She had gone missing in 1998, just 2 towns over. She was only 17 when she vanished after leaving a party late at night. Her case had gone cold until my nephew accidentally unearthed her. That should have been the end of the horror, but it was. Later that week, my mom sat me down and told me something that still gives me chills. When she and her sister had been hiding the Easter eggs earlier that morning, she had gone near that exact patch of woods. She had bent down to place a pink egg behind a rock and found a hole already dug in the dirt. It had been freshly turned, like someone had just been there. The hole was empty. She figured it was an animal den and covered it back up. But by the time Lucas found the jawbone, that hole was filled in with bones. Someone had reburied Amanda's remains that morning. The idea that someone, maybe her killer, had returned that very day to dig her back into the earth made our skin crawl. The woods had always felt eerie, but this was different. This was real and recent. The police never publicly identified a suspect, but whispered rumors spread fast. One of the older neighbors who lived a few miles down the road had once dated Amanda in high school. He had been questioned during the original investigation, but no evidence linked him. He moved out of the area just weeks after Amanda's remains were found. We never celebrated Easter at that farmhouse again. My grandmother moved in with my aunt, and the old house was sold to strangers. I drove by once a few years later and saw kids playing in the yard. I hoped they never found anything in the woods. But sometimes on cold Easter mornings, I wonder, what if there are more eggs hidden back there, waiting to be found? Story 2: The Bunny Man's Trail. This happened to me and my older sister in 2013, when we were spending Easter with our cousins in Fairfax County, Virginia. Their neighborhood was nestled near a stretch of dense forest that locals often referred to as the Bunny Man Woods. I thought it was just some dumb urban legend until that weekend. We were all in our teens at the time, bored with Easter egg hunts and too old to care about chocolate bunnies. My cousin Tommy had a rebellious streak, and that Sunday evening he dared us to sneak into the woods to find the infamous Bunny Man Bridge, a creepy old railroad overpass tied to all sorts of ghost stories. We weren't supposed to go. Our aunt and uncle warned us the area was private property and said people had gotten hurt out there before, but that just made it more exciting. So around 9 p.m., with flashlights and phones in hand, we snuck out. The air was damp, filled with the smell of wet leaves and old moss. The deeper we went into the woods, the quieter it got, like even the wind didn't want to go near the place. After about 30 minutes of hiking, we finally saw the bridge. It wasn't that big, just a concrete overpass stained with graffiti and moss with a single rusted rail on top, but standing under it gave me the chills. The stories came rushing back about the man in the rabbit suit with a bloody axe, about how he was once an escaped mental patient, and how he'd slaughtered teens who got too close to his bridge. Just folklore, I thought. But then we heard it, a soft crunch like a footstep on leaves. We all froze. Probably just a deer, Tommy whispered. Then came another crunch and another, closer. We turned our flashlights toward the trees, and that's when we saw it. A figure, tall, thin, standing completely still among the trees. He was wearing what looked like a white hoodie with long ears, like a homemade bunny costume. The face was wrong though, not a mask, just a distorted mess of skin and shadow under the hood. No eyes, just blackness where the face should be. "Who the hell?" my sister started, but stopped when the figure stepped forward. That's when we ran. We bolted back through the trees, scrambling over rocks and roots. I tripped twice. Tommy pulled me up both times. I kept hearing branches snap behind us like someone or something was following. I didn't dare look back. We finally saw the lights of the neighborhood and didn't stop running until we were inside the house with the door locked behind us. Panting, sweating, terrified. My aunt was furious, but her anger faded when she saw how shaken we were. We told her everything. To our surprise, she didn't laugh, she didn't scold us. She just sat down and said, "You're not the first." Apparently, over the years, several teens had reported seeing the same figure out in those woods, always around Easter, always near the bridge. Some called it a hoax, others swore it was real. One guy even claimed the bunny man scratched his car up with a hatchet. He had photos, long, angry gouges along the side panels. The police dismissed it as vandalism. But here's the part that still haunts me. The next day, when we walked to the edge of the woods in broad daylight, we saw something nailed to a tree just inside the tree line. It was a piece of wood, carved crudely with a hunting knife. 3 words. "I see you." Underneath was a smudged, hand-drawn rabbit face. The kind little kids might doodle, except the eyes were scribbled out violently. We reported it, the police came, took the carving, and warned everyone to stay out of the woods. They never found who made it. But every Easter since then, I still check the news and Reddit threads from Virginia. Sometimes people post sightings, a man in a bunny hood watching from the trees. I haven't gone back to those woods, I never will. But every year around Easter, I swear I hear a faint crunch outside my bedroom window, just once, and I can't help but wonder. Has the bunny man followed me home? Story 3, The Forgotten Basket. When I was a kid, Easter was always something special. My grandma made a huge deal out of it. We'd go to her house in rural Pennsylvania every spring. She had this cozy little farmhouse surrounded by woods, with old creaky floorboards and a backyard full of lilacs and daffodils. It was the kind of place that made you feel safe. Until one Easter when I was 12. That year, my mom and I arrived a day earlier than usual to help Grandma set up. She seemed off when we got there, distracted, nervous. She kept glancing out the window and locking the doors, even though we were way out in the country. When my mom asked about it, she just said something like, "I've been seeing someone in the woods again, probably just a hiker." That night, I had trouble sleeping. I was on the pull-out couch in the living room when I heard what sounded like footsteps on the porch. Soft, almost delicate, like someone trying not to be heard. I looked out the window, heart pounding. There was a figure on the edge of the tree line, barely visible, tall, wearing white. At first I thought it was a person in a long coat, but then I noticed the ears. Long, drooping ears, like a rabbit costume. Not the kind you'd see in a store, this one looked like it had been made by hand. The mask looked like papier-mâché, misshapen and stained. It stood there, watching. I told my mom and Grandma the next morning, but they brushed it off. "Maybe a prank," Grandma said, though she looked more worried than she let on. The next day was Easter. We had a small egg hunt in the yard. Grandma even brought out the Easter baskets, but something was off. There was an extra one. 5 of us were there, me, my mom, Grandma, and my 2 cousins, but there were 6 baskets. The 6th one was old, dusty, the woven edges fraying. Inside was a single hard-boiled egg, dyed dark red, no chocolate, no candy. just that red egg and a note folded underneath it. I picked it up. The note was written in childish handwriting. The letters were jagged and uneven. I never got my basket, now I take one. At first we thought it was some kind of joke, maybe my cousin playing a prank, but he swore up and down it wasn't him. Grandma's face turned pale when she saw the note. She grabbed it, tore it up, and burned the pieces in the fireplace. That night it got worse. Around midnight, the front porch light flickered on. We looked through the blinds and saw the rabbit man again, closer this time, standing right at the porch steps, just staring up at the door. My mom called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They searched the woods and found bare footprints in the mud near the house. Human footprints. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, there was a trail of red eggs leading from the porch into the woods, 10 of them lined up perfectly. The police took them, said they were just hard-boiled and died, probably placed there as a hoax, but Grandma knew better. Later that day, she pulled me aside and told me something she hadn't shared before. When she was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, there had been a kid in the village named Charles, quiet, poor. He came to school one day near Easter, wearing a homemade bunny mask, trying to join in the fun. The other kids laughed at him, made fun of his mask, called him names. He went missing that same weekend. They never found him. Grandma swore he came to her in a dream one night, years later, asking why she never gave him a basket. She said she'd forgotten about it for decades, until the day he showed up at her porch again. I think he still wants a basket, she said, trembling. That was the last Easter we spent at Grandma. She passed away 2 years later, but every year since I've gotten a package in the mail around Easter. No return address, just a small, dusty basket inside. And a single red egg. Story 4, the Easter Sunday Intruder. In 2016, I was attending college in Oregon, and during Easter break, I stayed with my roommate Kayla at her family's cabin in the mountains. It was a cozy A-frame, surrounded by pine trees and far from any real civilization. The perfect place to unplug, eat candy, and binge horror movies. Her family was out of town that year, so it was just us two. We brought snacks, wine, and Easter decorations to make the place feel festive. Kayla even brought a stuffed bunny she'd had since childhood. She said it was a tradition. It always sat on the windowsill during Easter. We arrived on Friday and everything was fine, peaceful, quiet. That night, we stayed up watching old horror movies until we passed out on the couch. It wasn't until Saturday morning that things started to feel wrong. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Something foul, like something had died nearby. Kayla figured it was just a dead animal in the woods, but it didn't go away. By midday, it was stronger, coming from inside the cabin. We searched every inch, under the furniture, in the attic, even the crawl space. Nothing. Later, while setting up plastic eggs outside for a silly 2-person hunt, we noticed footprints in the dirt behind the cabin. Bare feet, adult-sized, deep impressions like someone had been standing there for hours, watching. We joked about it nervously, but Kayla eventually shrugged it off as maybe her dad checking in. Still, we locked the doors that night, double-checked every window. I even propped a chair under the doorknob to the back deck. But at 3:12 a.m., something woke me up. The sound of creaking floorboards. I sat up, heart racing, straining to hear. It came again, slow, deliberate footsteps on the back deck, then silence. I woke Kayla, whispering that someone might be outside. We grabbed her dad's old hunting knife from a drawer and crept to the back window. Nothing, no one. But the chair I had propped under the back door, it was moved. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Easter Sunday, we found something even worse. On the kitchen table sat the stuffed bunny Kayla had brought. But its eyes were missing, cut out, the stitching torn open. Next to it was a single hard-boiled egg, cracked and leaking yolk onto a note written in red ink, or maybe something worse. "You're never alone on Easter." That's when we noticed the smell again, stronger, and this time it was definitely coming from inside the house. We searched every room, and finally in the attic above the bedroom we found it. A pile of half-rotted animal remains, rabbits, squirrels, bones, all arranged in a rough spiral pattern. In the center, another stuffed bunny, not Kayla's, a different one, older, dirtier, moldy. We packed up immediately, terrified out of our minds, but before we left, we reported it to the local sheriff. He looked disturbed when he saw the attic, said it reminded him of an old case from a decade earlier, a man who used to live out in those woods alone, obsessed with Easter. He believed the holiday was a time when the veil thinned and spirits could return, especially those who'd been forgotten. After his wife left him, he'd started leaving offerings in the woods: eggs, candy, dolls, then animals. He vanished in 2007, never found. The sheriff thought maybe someone had stumbled onto the old cabin, maybe a squatter or a local off-grid hermit, but it didn't explain the note, the message, the mutilated bunny. Kayla and I never went back. Every Easter since, I make sure I'm surrounded by people. I don't decorate, I don't celebrate, I especially don't put up bunnies or eggs. Because sometimes, when the night is quiet and the wind rustles just right, I swear I hear those floorboards creak again. Like something still following us. Waiting for Easter to return. Story 5: The Bunny Masked Man. Back in 2019, I was working as a camp counselor at a nature center in Pennsylvania. It wasn't a full-blown summer camp, just a weekend retreat program during spring break for families and their kids. Since Easter fell in the middle of the program, we planned some fun holiday-themed activities: egg painting, marshmallow roasting, and a small egg hunt through the trails around the camp. There were 5 of us counselors, a dozen kids, and about 7 parents staying in cabins nearby. It was supposed to be a light, joyful time, and for the first 2 days, it was exactly that. Until the night before Easter Sunday. That's when things got seriously weird. Around 1 a.m., I was walking back from the main hall after cleaning up the arts and crafts room when I saw someone standing at the edge of the woods. At first, I thought it was another counselor playing a prank. They were tall, wearing a filthy white bunny mask with long ears and dark eye holes. Their clothes were ragged like something out of a haunted house attraction. I laughed and said, "Nice try, you're not scaring me." But they didn't move, just stood there, watching. I turned to go back to the cabin, but something made me glance back. Gone. The next morning, I mentioned it to the others. They laughed it off, assuming I was dreaming or maybe one of the local teens was messing with us. We had a small town nearby, and sometimes kids would sneak into the trails for fun. But then that afternoon, during the egg hunt, one of the younger kids started screaming. She said she'd seen the Easter bunny, but he was wrong. According to her, he had red hands, no eyes, and he told her to stay in the woods with him. We calmed her down, but the other kids started getting scared too. One boy claimed he saw the same figure crouched behind a tree, holding a basket full of what looked like real animal bones. We decided to end the hunt early. That night, just after lights out, one of the moms banged on our cabin door. She was hysterical. Her son, Owen, 6 years old, was missing from his bed. We launched a search party, calling his name, splitting into groups with flashlights, searching the surrounding trails. After nearly an hour, we found him near the creek, sitting cross-legged on the dirt, just sitting. His pajamas were soaked, his hands were muddy. When we asked what happened, he looked up slowly and whispered, "The bunny told me to wait here for the others." We took him back, called the police, filed a report. Here where it gets even more disturbing. Owen's mom said she'd been having dreams for days before the trip of a man in a rabbit mask standing outside her window. She thought it was stress. But when we showed her a sketch one of the older kids drew of the figure they saw in the woods, it matched exactly. When the police came, they checked the perimeter and found makeshift burrows dug into the woods, like little pits someone had been hiding in. In one of them, they discovered broken dolls, candy wrappers, bones, and a soaked, crumpled Polaroid of a child, not from our group. The photo looked old, from the 80s or 90s. The police never found the masked man. But they did uncover a decades-old case about a local man who went missing after being institutionalized. He used to dress in an Easter bunny costume at the town fair. Witnesses said he started acting strange, telling people Easter wasn't about joy or rebirth, but sacrifice. When he disappeared, they thought he had taken his own life in the woods. But maybe he hadn't. We cut the retreat short. Every family packed up and left the next morning. And now every Easter, I don't think about chocolate or brunch or painted eggs. I think about a man in a mask hiding in the woods, waiting for nightfall, waiting for children. And I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found Owen in time. Not all holidays end with laughter and candy. For the people in these stories, Easter became something they'd never forget, for all the wrong reasons. Whether it was a strange visitor, a vanishing in the woods, or something crawling just out of sight, these real encounters prove that even the brightest holidays can cast the darkest shadows. If you enjoyed these stories and want more unsettling true tales from around the world, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us here at Old Forest, where we dig deep into the eerie, the haunted, and the things that most would rather forget. Headphone until next time. Keep your eyes open, your doors locked, and never ignore the sound of footsteps in the dark. Happy Easter and good night.